Okay, it's chapter 4. Chapter 4, studying translation, product, and process. Okay. يعني هنا بنعتبر translation as a product and as a process at the same time. In the technical sense of any strategy in translation is an overall orientation of the translator. For example, towards free literal translation and towards the text translation or source translation, towards domestication and foreignization. Okay, what does it mean? يعني الاتجاهات الخاصة بالترجمة towards free translation or literal translation. It means word by word زي ما قلنا word translation, okay, or free translation. Free translation means ترجم بقى براحتك. It's a free translation. ترجم okay بس طبعا depending on target language and its culture. So free translation, the most important thing here is the culture, the target reader, the target language. But in literal translation, it's not important, just words, word by word translation. Okay. في بقى two terms مهمين جدا: domestication and foreignization. كلمة domestication from domestic, foreignization from foreign. So domestication means I'll translate what is near from your culture. I make domestication. So I translate what is near from you. حتى بالعربي بنسميها التقريب. هي نظرية التقريب في الترجمة. طيب what does it mean؟ يعني ايه التقريب في الترجمة؟ يعني أنا هقرب الموضوع حسب ثقافتي أنا. ده domestication. لكن foreignization depending on the foreign not local, the foreign culture. Whereas procedure is a specific technique or method used by the translator at a certain point in a text. For example, borrowing, borrowing of words from the source language. Sometimes we make something called borrowing. I borrow some words from other language, or basically the source language. The addition of an explanation or a footnote in the target text. If I borrow a word from another language, I need explanation or footnote at the end of my translation to explain or to show what is the meaning. So what is borrowing? Borrowing means the source language word is transferred directly to the target language without any change. This category covers words such as the Russian words. They are originally Russian words. For example, ruble, dacha, okay, and the glasnost and pristorkia. They are Russian words that are used in English, and not only English, but other languages to fill a semantic gap in the target language. So sometimes I use the same words of source language. Here we have some examples of Russian words. They are borrowed words from Russian language. In languages with differing scripts, and here I mean differing scripts, it means orthography or writing system. So when we have languages with different writing system, borrowing entails an additional need for transcription, as in the borrowings of math, scientific, and other forms or terms from Arabic into Latin. هنا العربي بقى موجود أخيرا. إن العربي نفسه تم الاقتراض منه، يعني العربي تم اقتراض كلمات منه. فهنا واخدينه كاكزامبل زي الروسي، خدنا فوق الروسي كمثال، وهنا العربي كمثال اخر. بس الفرق ما بين هنا وهنا ان العربي ومن الانجليش ليهم نظام كتابي مختلف، فبالتالي هيكون في كمان احتياج تاني للترانسكريبشن اللي هو شكل الكتابة كمان مختلفة. بنستخدم ده في بعض المصطلحات الرياضية والعلمية، زي مثلا ما شفنا تحويل كلمة عربية إلى اللاتن، ومش بس اللاتن، إن بعد كده تحولت إلى other languages كمان. كلمة الجبر، الجبر أصلا هي كلمة عربية، بدأت طبعا بشكلها الأساسي الجبر، ثم بعد كده اتحولت إلى الكلمة اللاتن الجبر and الجبرة من إلى لغات كثيرة طبعا بعد كده. Okay, so here we have some expressions from Pearl. Okay, the most common one is calc. What is calc? Calc is Pearl too, but it's a special kind of Pearl, where the source language expression of or structure is transferred in a literal translation. Literally. Here, the transformation or the pairing literally. For example, the French calc science fiction for the English word. So the French use the same expression. Science fiction is originally it's English, but I use it in French science fiction too. So it's calc. I use it as the same word, the same in everything, writing, pronunciation, and everything. So it's calc. So what is literal translation? As we said, this is word for word translation. We have two linguists, Viner and Darbney. Vinay and Darbney describe, they are two linguists, describe as being the most common between languages of the same family and culture. Okay, so the word for word translation or literal translation, it's a word for word translation between languages, especially when they are of the same family and culture, like German and English, for example. In those cases where literal translation is not possible, sometimes literal translation is not possible. Vinay and Turpney say that the strategy of oblique translation must be used. But what is the meaning of oblique translation? It's a translation, but in indirect way, not directly. It's indirectly or indirect way must be used. And we have many kinds of oblique translation. For example, we have transposition. Transposition. Okay, so what is transposition? It's change of one part of speech for another. For example, it's a noun in English. I translate it as a verb in Arabic. It's an adjective. I translate it as an adverb. Okay, so I make transposition. It's transposition without changing the sense. I didn't change the stance. The stance is the same. Transposition can be obligatory or optional. For example, in French, when I say term, زي ما قلنا بقى في الفرنش واحنا مش perfect in French بس المهم المينينج يعني. When we say in French, this son levé, it means upon her rising. In a past context, would be translated by as soon as she got up. Okay, so دي كده احنا عملنا لها ايه؟ transposition. What is transposition? Transposition يعني حولت noun لverb, verb لnoun. Okay, so the meaning of this only way in French, it's upon her rising. But I translated as soon as she got up. Instead of using nouns, I used the verb, for example. I used the clause. Okay, it's obligatory. Sometimes it's obligatory. Optional in the reverse direction. The English, when I have the English sentence, as soon as she got up, would be translated into French, literally as, لو ترجمناها حرفيا, from English into French, décoller, c'est, DV, or as a verb to noun translate. Here we have option. It's option. So I have two options. So I can translate it literally, okay, as it is in English. I transferred it into French, or I make transposition. Transposition means I transform, I make transposition, make the verb to noun. In descend verb, it means in English upon her rising. Okay, that's called transposition. Transposition أنا كده بغير part of speech from noun to verb, from verb to noun, from adjective to adverb, okay, from language to language. Another strategy, it's called modulation. Okay. What's the meaning of modulation? It's change the semantics and the point of view of the source language. Okay. For example, when I say I'm not happy today, okay, so I can make modulation instead of saying I'm not happy today, I can say I'm sad today. So here I made modulation. It's a change in the point of view. It's not change in the sense itself. Okay. Modulation itself has obligatory usage and optional. Obligatory, for example, when we say the time when translates as le moment où in French. Okay, literally the moment where. Okay, the moment where. Optional, here I have options, though linked to preferred structures of two languages. For example, the reversal of point of view it's so difficult to show. It's not difficult. It is not difficult to show. It becomes in French, il est facile de démontrer. In English means literally, it's easy to show. So I translated, it's not difficult, to it's easy. From negative to positive. Point of view is different, yes, okay. But the sense is not different. Modulation at the level of message is subdivided along the following lines. Okay, for example, I can make modulation from abstract to concrete, or from concrete to abstract, particular to general, or from general to particular. For example, she can do no other. It means she cannot act differently. Okay, give a pint of blood. It means give a little blood. The same meaning, okay, but I make something like from abstract to concrete, from general to specific or particular, and vice versa. We have explicative modulation, or from effect to cause and effect. Okay, so I can say you're quite stranger, or we don't see you anymore. Okay, so it's from effect to cause, or from cause to effect. Whole part, from whole to part, or from part to whole. For example, he shut the door in my face, he shut the door in my nose. So face, it's a whole. Nose, it's a part of my face. Negation of opposite. Negation of opposite. It doesn't seem unusual. Okay, it's very normal. So it's the same meaning, but not the same words. From active to passive or passive to active, we are not allowed to access the internet. It's the same. They don't allow us to access the internet. So here it's the same meaning, but I use modulation. Okay. Another part, equivalence or idiomatic translation. Here, idiomatic translation, it means translating idioms. And of course, as we know, idioms is a special case of translation because you have to understand what is the implied meaning of the phrase or the idiom itself. So Vinay and Dorbelnay again use this term, idiomatic translation, to refer to cases where languages describe the same situation by different stylistic or structural means. Equivalence is particularly useful in translating idioms and proverbs. Idioms or proverbs. Proverbs as in Arabic زي الأمثال بقى والحاجات دي. The sense, though not the image. Okay? The sense, though not the image of هناخد example in French of comme chien don un jeu de coller. Literally, it's like a dog in a game of skittles. It's a literal translation, and it can be rendered as like a ball in a china shop. It's literal meaning, but it really means, okay, this is an idiom, okay, so it's an idiom, it's a French idiom, okay, but here it's a literal translation. But what is the implied meaning? It really means a way of describing something that arrives at the worst possible time. مش في ميعادها خلاص، فات الأوان، جت في وقت غير وقت. The use of equivalence in this restricted sense shouldn't be confused. We have to be very careful using translation for idioms. Okay. Adaptation, and it has another meaning. It's a cultural substitution. Okay. So adaptation, it depends on culture. Different cultures between languages or countries. This involves changing the culture reference when a situation in the source culture doesn't exist in the target culture. The difference here means I have something in my culture, it's not found in your culture. The culture reference here, it's or when a situation in the source culture doesn't exist in the target culture. So, for example, Vinay and Dorbelnay suggest that the cultural connotation or the implied meaning of a reference to the game of cricket in an English text. It's an example. Okay, so in English or in Britain or in England, cricket is a very popular game. Okay, so I can say many examples or many expressions using cricket. But it might be best translated into French by reference to the Tour de France. And Tour de France, the authors claim that a refusal to use such adaptation in an otherwise perfectly correct target text may still be noticeable by an undefinable tone, something that doesn't sound quite right. Tour de France, it means cycling, riding bicycles around the country. So as cricket is very popular in England, cycling is very popular in France. So some authors claim that we can use differently, use Cracket in translation into French, use Tour de France, and vice versa. But others say that is not true. However, whereas their solution may work for some restricted metaphorical uses because it won't work for all meanings. It would make little sense to change the domain Cracket to that of cycling in phrases such as "isn't Cracket that isn't fair," because they use Cracket in their expressions. So it won't be correct to translate Cracket in all cases like cycling in French, or in translating Sleepy Wednesday morning county match at Lord's. Here I mean cricket ground in London. So if I translated like cycling in France, so uh, I'll misunderstand the meaning. Okay, so another word of amplification. Amplification like expansion. So what is the meaning of amplification? The target language uses more words, often because of syntactic expansion. So it's the amplification. For example, the charge against him. I translated the charge brought against him. I have here expansion or amplification. The opposite of amplification is economy. It's the opposite word. False friend, as we mentioned in chapter 3, is actually similar term in source and target language, which deceives the user. It attracts. In thinking, the meaning is the same. You may think they are the same. For example, French library in French means not English library, but bookstore. And of course, library is different from bookstore. So in French, library in French means bookstore in English, not library in English. Loss, gain, and compensation in translation. Lost in translation has become a popular cliche, partly thanks to the film. Okay, it's a famous film with the same meaning. Okay, it's called Lost in Translation. Okay, so Lost in Translation has become a popular cliche. Translation does inevitably involve some loss, since it's impossible to preserve all the source text, nuance of meaning, and structure in the target language. So sometimes I have to make loss because it's not found in the other language or in the target language. However, importantly, a text or target text may make up for or compensate or compensation. So if you have to make loss, try to make compensation. This is by introducing a gain. Gain is the opposite of loss at the same or another point of the text. So try not to make loss. Try to compensate the word, making compensation, and then you introduce a gain. One example is the translation of dialogue. If the source language is a T or V language, it means formal or informal language, and shows a switch from formal to informal address. So French, vous and tu. In French, they are different. They are different in French. Like you in English, it's the same. You for singular and you for plural. It's the same word. Okay, so how can I change? In Arabic احنا عندنا أنت وأنتم، وكمان مش بس كده، وعندنا كمان respect way اللي هي بقى إيه حضرتك وحضراتكم وحاجات كده. But here we have you and two. Okay, two it means you, singular you, and you means plural you. So how can I define this or show this in English? I use you to make more respect. So English will need to find compensation way of rendering this, perhaps by switching from the use of the characters given name. So what is the compensation way or the compensatory way in English? We can use it as using the personal name. For example, Professor Newmark. His full name is Peter Newmark. So I can use Peter instead of Professor Newmark. So here I make a compensation. I had a solution here. So use Peter as a first name instead of formal name. So here the formal way of vous in French, you can use formal way in English using the surname with title. And you can use tu in French, it's the informal way, for example, using the first name in English. Okay, so it's the way we can use. Explicitation, it's a mix between explanation and interpretation. So implicit information in the source text is rendered explicit in the target text. This may occur on the level of grammar. For example, English source text, the doctor explicated as masculine or feminine. Doctor in English, okay, it's not clear in English to be masculine or feminine, but in target language like Arabic, for example, you have to decide, okay, if the doctor here is masculine or feminine, where indication of gender is essential. Sometimes it's essential. Okay, semantics. For example, the explanation of a source text cultural item or event, such as you are Thanksgiving. It's a specific or cultural specific here for US, or UK April Fool joke, and it's a specific culture for UK. Pragmatics, and the pragmatics, of course, is the use of language. For example, the opaque and culturally located US English idiom. It's easy to be a Monday morning quarterback, which already means, okay, of course, it's an idiom, as we said. So it has an implied meaning. So when we say in US English, it's an American English idiom, it's easy to be a Monday morning quarterback. What does it mean? Okay, it has an implied meaning, which already means someone who says how an event or problem should have been dealt with by others after it has already been dealt with. After finishing, you say the solution or what you have to do after finishing, of course. So it means Monday morning quarterback. Or discourse field such as increased cohesion in the target text. It means how to link the text or the discourse or your speech or your essay together. Non-obligatory explicitation has often suggested as a characteristic of translated language. We define explicitation as a non-obligatory explicitation. Okay, so It's a characteristic of translated language. From general, we have generalization. Okay, it use a more general word in the target text. It's like superordinate words. Examples would be source text computer, for example, to machine in target. Okay, we can use source static to happy in target. Okay, so here we make generalization. You generalize the word. You use more general word. Okay, like subordinate words. Again, generalization has been suggested as another characteristic of translation like non-obligatory explicitation. The seven main translation procedures are described as operating on 3 levels. What are the 3 levels? The lexicon, syntactic structures of syntax, the message itself, the message or the effect you have to convey. This is the difference between servitude and option. And servitude means obligation. Okay, so refers to obligatory transpositions and modulations due to a difference between the 2 language systems. You must use it. Thus, a translator will normally have no choice but to translate the Spanish noun adjective combination, okay, in Spanish, agua fría, literally water cold. Okay, هنترجمها من الاسباني للانجلش water cold by cold water. It's obligatory. You can't say it in English water cold like in Spanish. Similarly, adverbial structure in German and Japanese have a fixed order of time, manner, place. This is the order of adverbs in German and Japanese. In English, for example, it's not the same order. The order in English, okay, is manner, place, time. So German, Japanese fixed order of time, manner, place, adverbs. For example, morgen mit dem Verhört of Erbit. Of course, it's not a perfect pronunciation in German. Okay, 2 in English, tomorrow with the bicycle to work. Here, it's not the fixed order of English. German also requires the verb or auxiliary to be in second possession. Okay, in German, requires the verb or auxiliary to be in the second possession. Morgen muss ich mit dem Fahrrad auf Bord fahren. Tomorrow must I by bicycle to work travel. Of course, it's not the order of English. Okay, this is the obligation or servitude. Option refers to non-obligatory. It's the opposite. It's a non-obligatory change that may be due to the translator's own style. It's not obligatory, okay? So it depends on your style in translation and the preference, or to a change in emphasis. This could be the decision to amplify or explicate or a general term, for example, this. So you can translate it more specifically, this problem, this question, this issue, or to change word order when translating between languages that permit flexibility. So it's your own choice. So in English, you can say, my mother will phone at 6 o'clock. But in Spanish, you will say, las 6 la mi madre. In this order, at 6 will phone my mother. Okay, so it's the order in Spanish, okay, not in English. Okay, so Vinay and Durbani Okay, Vinay and Renee list 5 analytical steps for the translator to follow in moving from source text to target text. Okay, so what are these 5 steps? Identify the units of translation first. Then, to examine the source language text, evaluating the descriptive, effective, and intellectual content of the unit. So, number 1, identification. Number 2, examination. Number 3, reconstruct the metalinguistic context of the message. So number 3 is reconstruction of the message. Number 4, evaluate the stylistic effects. Evaluate the effect. Number 5, produce and revise the target text. The final step, you can produce the text, okay, the target text, but revise. Despite these problems, there are some important features that can be investigated by such studies. Most important, perhaps, is the analysis of the relative markedness of stylistic choices in target text and source text. So, what is markedness? Markedness relates to a choice or patterns of choices that stand out as unusual and may come to the reader's attention. So, in English, a sequence such as, it's an example, challenging it is, boring it isn't. Okay, so it's something in English, it's an example like this. Challenging it is, boring it isn't, is marked because
ما فهمتهاش.
yes.
ما فهمتهاش.
Okay, which one? Markedness?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Can I use some Arabic?
Okay.
But it's not finished yet. You can understand, don't worry. اوكي بس هوضحها لك شويه، بس انت استعجلتي، هي لسه هتبان. الاكزامبل هيوضحها لك. هو challenging is boring it isn't, it's an example. الاكزامبل ده هم استخدموه في دعايه عايزين يشجعوا الناس ان هم يلتحقوا بالشرطه الانجليزيه. عايزين يعملوا ايه؟ عايزين يعملوا حاجه تجذب الريدر، عايزين يجذبوا الناس، فاستخدموا اسلوب غير معتاد للترتيب الخاص بالانجلش. هو المفروض ان الترتيب العادي اكيد مش هيكون كده. يعني challenging it is كانت هتبقى ايه؟ it is challenging. boring it isn't كانت هتبقى it isn't boring. يعني كان المفروض الترتيب العادي في الجمل دي ان كانت هتبقى انا بتكلم على وظيفه بحاول اشجعكم ليها، فبقول لكم it is challenging it isn't boring. هم عملوا ايه؟ عملوا عكس الترتيب المعتاد. ليه؟ عشان يجذب الانتباه بس مش اكتر. هنا هو عمل ايه؟ عمل ماركت، يعني عمل كانه عمل مارك كده، او تعليم او تعليم، توضيح لحاجه معينه. اوكي clear؟
Yes.
Okay. So markedness, again, it's this example, challenging it is, boring it isn't, marked because of the unusual word order. So why is it marked? Because unusual word order. With the adjectives in first possession, it's not the possession of the adjective. I don't start with adjective in English. The key is to look for the reason behind the market. So markedness has reason. In this case, the wording is from a job advert. It's from a job advert. It's from the recruit police in London. So the marketing functions to draw the reader's attention to the advert and to illustrate that it's an unusual and challenging job. It means I want to say it is challenging job. It isn't a boring job, but I use something unusual in order, okay, to attract the attention of people. Okay, so we have interpretive model of translation, championed in Paris from the 1960s onwards by Danica Silkwetch and Mern Leder, and initially applied to the study of conference interruption, explains translation as an overlapping three-stage process involving the following. So this is a model, interpretive model of translation in 1960s by Danica Silkwetch and Marion Leder. Okay, so here we have three-stage process. What are they? Reading and understanding. Okay, read and understand. Okay. Deverbalization. Deverbalization. What does it mean? Deverbalization. It means you can avoid verbs. Don't concentrate on verbs. Just concentrate on words to understand what's the meaning of all nouns and all adjectives without verbs. So if you avoid verbs, you can understand easily and quickly, because you won't encounter tenses and verb forms and so on. And number three, re-expression. It means try to re-express the text or the speech yourself. So there are the three-stage process in interpretive model of translation, 1960, by Danica Silkwetch and Marion Leder. From the perspective in relevance theory, the important work of Ernst August Gott claims translation is an example of a communication based around a cause and effect model of inferencing and interpretation. It means you can infer or conduct the meaning, deduce the meaning. For example, and any successful communication is said to depend on the communicators ensuring that his or her informative intention is grasped. Grasped means understood by the receiver. And this is achieved by making the stimulus in words, gestures, okay, in expressions, optimally relevant to the extent that the receiver can expect to drive contextual effect without spending unnecessary effort. So when I read something, I have expectations. I can understand. I can expect something or make a prediction. So how can I make all of these expectations? From the style of the writer or translator. So the Ernst August Gott claims that translation is an example of communication based on around the cause and effect model of inferencing and interpretation. And any successful communication is said to depend on communicators ensuring that his or her informative intention is grasped by the receiver. It is the most important point. So I have to make sure the receiver or the reader will understand what I mean my intention, the informative intention. And this is achieved by making some keywords, illustrative gestures, more clear expressions, and they optimally relevant to the extent that the receiver can expect to drive adequate contextual effects without spending unnecessary effort. That is, the communicator gives the hearer communicative clues that allow the inference to be made. He should help. And here in Hatem and Monday illustrate this with a discussion of the following example from the Canadian Parliament. This is an example in translating. A Canadian MP had to apologize to the House of humming the theme song from The Godfather, while Public Works Minister Alfonso Giuliano, who is of Italian descent, addressed the body. Here, when we translated, لما تم ترجمتها، ترجمناها إن اضطر نائب برلماني كندي للاعتذار أمام المجلس بسبب همهمة أغنية المقدمة من فيلم الأب الروحي، بينما كان وزير الأشغال العامة ألفونسو غاليانو اللي هو اللي من أصول إيطالية يخاطب المجلس. هنا بقى الفكرة إن المترجمين هنا لازم يخلي القارئ يتوقع ويتنبأ الموضوع. يعني أنا بوضح إنه الأب الروحي ده هو أصلا فيلم إيطالي، والمقدمة بتاعتها أكيد فيها إيحاءات مثلا بتكذيب أو بتخوين أو بحاجة شبه كده. فالترانسليتورز for their part are faced with similar situation and have several responsibilities. يعني دي مسؤولية المترجم، لأنه هيواجه مواقف زي كده هو اللي لازم يوضح فيها إن في مفاهيم معينة وفي حاجات معينة لازم أنا اللي أوضحها، أنا لازم اللي أساعد القارئ اللي هيقرأ الترجمة في إنه يلاقي توقعات ويفهم النوايا والمسج المطلوب إن هو يفهمها مش لوحده، لازم أنا اللي أساعده في توضيحها. They need to decide. فمحتاجين إن هم يقرروا بقى whether and how it's possible to communicate the informative intention. ده بقى دور الترانسليتورز. Whether to translate descriptively or interpretively. What the degree of resemblance of the source target should be, and so on. So 3 points they have to decide. These decisions are based on the translator's evaluation of the cognitive environment of the receiver. It depends on the receiver. It depends on the reader, the target reader. To succeed, the translator and receiver must share basic assumptions, expectations about their semblance that is so, and the translator's intentions must agree with the receiver's expectations. It's very important. Your intention as a translator must agree with the receiver's or the reader's expectations, as we said before. Okay, that's all about chapter 4. ده كان برضو التوضيح العربي، يعني افترضت ان احنا ممكن نحتاجه برضو. يعني ده التوضيح لبعض المصطلحات اللي شفناها في 4 زي borrowing، زي calc، زي literal translation، manipulation، equivalence، بتوضيح examples in Arabic برضو علشان تبقى الصورة واضحة، لأن الexamples طبعا اللي احنا خدناها من الكتاب كانت خاصة أكتر بالأسباني والإيطالي ولغات أخرى كتير، لكن ما كانش في عربي. العربي هيكون برضو إضافة للمحتوى اللي
شكرا يا دكتور.
بالتوفيق يا رب إن شاء الله. دي لي أي questions بقى بتاعتك؟